Hey everyone, this is Sanya here, and today we will be looking at the story Berry by Langston Hughes. Alright, so when we hear the term berry, what comes to mind? Well, some people may think of a fruit, and I have gotten a response from a student at one point that the word berry reminds her of somebody being buried underground. And I was thinking, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Well, let us examine the entire story to see why it was entitled Berry. Now, just an overview of the story. The story of Berry, it took place in the times in America when racism was at the peak. It was at a all-time high, and even this day, that America is racist. Is one of those countries that we deem as being a racist country, right? So, Berry happened to be a black man who, living in America in that time. Now, let us look at the story. It says, when the boy arrived on the 4 o'clock train, lo and behold, he turned up. So it says, when the boy came on the 4 o'clock train, lo and behold, he turned out to be colored. Now, that very first line in the story is something that is stood me in my grounds, right? In my tracks. When the boy, the fact that he was referred to as a boy is either two things. Yes, so it's either two things. Either Berry was indeed a child, someone between the ages of probably 1 year or 2 years old, somewhere thereabout, up until 18, years old, right? Or under 18 years old. Or he probably was a young adult, right? So from anywhere from 18 years old, I would suggest up until 20-25 at most, right? Another option could be that Berry was described as a boy because the white people in those days or in those times did not respect him. As most of the time, if an actual adult was referred to as a boy, it's just a sign to say that you lack respect for that adult. Another term that we will be looking at is the part where he said, lo and behold, he turned out to be colored. Now, when you hear the term lo and behold, it gives that sense of disappointment to say, lo and behold, he turned out to be colored. So it is clear that the person who saw him that 4 o'clock at the train station was disappointed by the fact that he turned out to be colored. Now, ask yourself, how would you feel if you were buried in this situation to know that you were, not accepted primarily because you were black? It must have been a terrible feeling, It goes on to say, there was nothing to be done about it that night, with no trains back to the city before morning. So what do you think that the person would have done to this young black man had there been trains going back to the city? Yes, you're right. They would have put him back on the train and sent him back to where he is coming from. But because it was the final train that he came on, there was nothing. He was left stranded with this black man. They don't know what to do with this person, So, and what they did to him was they set him to do dishes. So think about it. You just arrive at this place. You don't know this place. You have never been here before as a black person. And when you got there, immediately they sent you to do dishes. And according to the passage, it says, Lord knows there were a plenty, right? There were a plenty. The Scandinavian kitchen boy had left right after breakfast, giving no notice, leaving her and the cook to do everything, right? So right there, it is given the reason why why Barry was sought for, or not really Barry, but why help was needed, why they requested help in the first place, because there was indeed an employee who was responsible for doing the dishes. However, it seems they said he left without notice, right? They said the Scandinavian kitchen boy had left right after breakfast, giving no notice. So right there, all the work was left on Mrs. Osborne, who she said she saw him the minute that Barry got out of the car, right? So, with the work left on her and the cook, she needed immediate helper, somebody to replace that Scandinavian kitchen boy. So it seems to me like he walked off the job probably for various reasons. Maybe he's not getting enough pay, or maybe the work was just too overwhelming. It could be for various reasons why the Scandinavian kitchen boy just left the job just like that. And the minute Barry got there, he was supposed to, he was just set to do all these dishes, which, anyone would deem to be unfair, right? So, her wire to the employment office in New Jersey brought results, but dark ones. So what she is saying is that, yes, she picked up the phone, she called the office in Jersey City for another employee to do the job. And yes, they sent another worker, another employee. The only problem is that the results, were dark ones. And of course, we know that dark ones are referring to black people. So, they're going all around the N-word. They're trying to use every insulting word around the N-word, right? So they call them dark ones, colored, all these terms that is not, that they should not be used. However, they use them because they were living in that time when racism it seems to be almost acceptable. All right, guys. So when you look at it, and the very fact that it continues to say that the card said his name was Milberry Jones. So she didn't even ask him. She didn't even turn to him and say, what is your name? She did not converse with him. There was no conversation going on between them. She only flipped over his card and see that his name was Milberry Jones. So right there, from the very start, we can foretell, we can foreshadow that it will not be an easy, it will not be a wonderful end, because the start is just messy. The foundation is messy, so that when the building reaches the top, it will not be strong. Something is going to go down. We know that from the very start. All right, so let us look at the second paragraph. Well, where was he to sleep? Where will he sleep tonight? Heretofore, the kitchen boy and the handyman and the gardener and the chauffeur shared the same quarters. But Mrs. Osborne had no idea where the handyman or how the handyman liked Negroes, right? So what she's saying is that all the workers are there, the handyman and all these people are there, but they are all white. So she wouldn't know how they would accept Barry. So it is clear that Barry would have been the only black person in that institution where he is going to work, and that in itself is going to create a problem, because right away she's worried. Mrs. Osborne is worried about where Barry would sleep. only because of the color of his skin. And she was worried also. She did not want to lose her white help. She goes on to say, help were so touchy and it was hard keeping good servants in the country. So she didn't want to jeopardize the fact that she could lose, her real white servants because she accepted a black one. So she was a little, skeptic. She was worried about that. So right after dinner, leaving Milbury with his arms in the water. So that is just to show you, for the fact that this was highlighted, that is just to show you how ugly, that entrance for Berry was, leaving his arms in the dishwater. Mrs. Berry made a beeline across the lawn for Dr. Renfield's cottage. Now, that is the first time we're going to get introduced to this new character, Dr. Renfield. Now, who do you think Dr. Renfield is, and why would she go to his cottage to seek advice from him? Who is this Dr. Renfield? All right, we're going to find out more about this Dr. Renfield. So she heard the kids laughing and playing on the big screen in the front porch of the sanitarium. She heard one of the nurses say to a child, "Behave, Billy," as she went across the yard under the pine and maple trees. Mrs. Osborne hoped Dr. Renfield would be on his porch. So she really wanted to see this doctor. It is a matter of urgency. She hated, listen to this, she hated to knock on the door and perhaps be faced with his wife. So right there, things, are starting to get a little bit more interesting. Why wouldn't she want to see his wife? What's going on right there? Now, let us see. The gossip among the nurses and the help at Dr. Renfield's summer home for crippled children had it that Mrs. Osborne was in love with Dr. Renfield and that she just worshipped him, that she followed him with her eyes every chance she got, and not only with her eyes. So right there, we are getting additional information about Mrs. Osborne as well as Dr. Renfield. We get to understand that she goes to him for advice, but there was something a little more according to what everybody is saying, the gossip, the rumors that was going around, spreading like wildfire, that this Mrs. Osborne, and of course it is clear that she's married, Mrs. Osborne, that she is in love with the doctor, and she worshipped him, and she followed him with her eyes. So these are some evidence being put against her to show, to prove that she is in love with Dr. Renfield. Right, she followed him with her eyes. She is flirting with Dr. Renfield, and we come to know now that Dr. Renfield was indeed the owner, or some people would have it, the boss of this company that they were working with. It is called Dr. Renfield's Summer Home for Crippled Children, and that's why they had the sanitarium and the children and the nurses and the help. That's the reason why. No, it is painting a better picture of why Berry is there and why they had these dirty dishes. It was to feed the children, and why they had nurses, because, it's a home, it's a summer home for crippled children where children would stay. Crippled children would stay for the summer while their parents go out and do other things. Somebody's there to take care of them for the entire summer. Right. So, the picture is getting a little brighter and brighter. Of course, let us continue. Of course, there wasn't a word of truth about it. And that's what she's saying to herself. Mrs. Osborne said to herself, admitting at the same time that Martha Renfield, his wife, was certainly not good enough for the doctor. So it's clear right there that Mrs. Osborne was jealous of the doctor's wife. Because why would she say that he was not good enough for the doctor? How would she know that? Was she in their relationship to know if she is good enough? Did the doctor told her that? Why would she come to that conclusion? Do you think it is so, or do you think that she's probably jealous that she wasn't in Martha Rensfield's place? Let us continue to follow this story. It is getting a lot more interesting. I'm loving it. Anyway, tonight she was not bound on any frivolous errand towards the doctor's cottage. She had to see him about this Negro in their midst. So yes, she was in love with him, but that is not what she's there about. She was literally and seriously concerned about having Berry in their midst. What will she do with this Negro in their midst? She's stranded. She's stuck with this Negro. What is she going to do about him? Because there's no train to send him back. She doesn't know where he will sleep tonight, or where he will sleep. So what is he, or what is she to do with this Negro in her midst? At least they have to keep him there overnight, or until they got somebody else in to help in the kitchen. However, he looked like a decent boy. So in all honesty, she had no problem with him. She even admit that he looked like a decent boy. He doesn't give, when you look at him, you can see that he's not a troublemaker or anything. The biggest problem with him is that he was black, unfortunately, for her. All right, so Dr. Renfield was not at home. His wife came to the door, spoke most coldly, and said that she presumed, as usual, the doctor would make his rounds at the home at 8 o'clock, right? She hoped Mrs. Osborne could wait until then to see him. Yes, but let us examine the conversation, the dialogue between Mrs. Renfield and Mrs. Osborne. It says there was an adjective or an adverb, I should say, to describe the way she spoke to him, and the word was coldly. She spoke most coldly to her. No, what is that saying? That is to say that even though the rumor had it that she was in love with the doctor, it is clear that the wife is also aware that she is in love with her husband, and because of that, she is giving her, everybody would call it an attitude. Like to say, do not ask for my husband. Something, it just giving her the attitude to say, wait until you make the rounds and you can see him then. You can literally hear the attitude coming out because of the diction, the words that were selected to describe exactly how she spoke to Mrs. Osborne, right? So this is the first page that we have covered of Berry. And I know that I made a lot of mistakes. It's my first time doing this, guys. So please bear with me as we move on to the second page. Okay, guys, welcome back. Welcome back to the second page of the new version, A World of Prose, Berry. You can find the story on page 182. So now we're on page 183. Now, guys, let us continue. Now, I forgot to add to the first page that one little line there, good evening, with an exclamation. And it is closed in closed quotation. So open quotation, good evening, exclamation sign, and close quotation. And right there, that was Dr. Renfield's wife speaking. So after she explained to Mrs. Osborne that she should wait until he makes the rounds on the cottage where the crippled children were to see him, she said, good evening. And so right there, that is adding to the fact that she was very cold. She gave her an attitude, that even me, I felt that attitude right there. All right, let us continue now, guys. So we are looking at the first paragraph, so that the word that was above the two words, good evening, and then now we're going to look at the paragraph that comes beneath those words. So Mrs. Osborne went back across a dark yard. She heard the surf rushing at the beach below and saw the new young moon rising. So, of course, you know that it was either late in the evening. She said dusk dark. So, of course, we're looking at a late evening, the time where it is beginning to become dark, you know, so we can see probably it depends on where you are in the world, but right here in Jamaica, I would call that approximately somewhere between late, 6:30 something going on 7 p.m. In the evening. She saw the young moon rising. So, of course, we know that the young moon is not going to be a very bright night at all, as opposed to if it was full moon. All right, so let us continue. She thought maybe the doctor was walking along the sea in the twilight alone. Ah, Dr. Renfield. Dr. Ren, so right there, let us go back. So she thought maybe the doctor was walking, and she used the word alone. Along, sorry. Oh, let me go back. Oh, I have to go back.